So I want to spend a couple of minutes discussing obvious solutions that are usually not thought about as enterprise reporting solutions. Right? Probably the main reason that SharePoint and Excel are not thought of as enterprise reporting solutions is because, one, that's not what they were designed for, and two, people think of these tools more as a data tracking, data entry tools more than a consumption layer. So you think of Excel, you think of some Excel tables where you enter and update data, right? You don't really, most people don't think of Excel as a way to consume data, right? And I would generally agree with them, except there's one key factor that nobody's taken into account, right? Which is the flexibility, but most importantly, the familiarity that people have with these tools, right? Whenever you have specific tool sets that are easy to use, right, it makes them more user-friendly. Therefore, more people are tended or trend to use those tools, right? So when people think of SharePoint, they think of documents, blogs, collaboration, but rarely do they think of exposing third-party data inside of SharePoint. Of course, there's organizations with elaborate SharePoint implementations where they use, business connectivity services to bring data from different sources into SharePoint. But generally, that requires a skill set that's not always common. So part of today's demo, I'm going to show some examples of how to easily map CAPPM data into SharePoint. And I bring this other screen up. What I'm going to show today isn't something that you necessarily just can do for CAPPM. It can be done with SAP, Jira, ServiceNow, Workday. Sky's the limit on enterprise tool sets that you can bring into SharePoint. Really what I want to show is the concept of what can be done. So one of the key pieces of this approach is bringing data from different tool sets into one screen. Generally also eliminates a large need to integrate data. I'm just going to spend a second on providing a couple of common examples that people use this for. For example, a lot of organizations have SAP and CAPPM where they integrate project financials or PO data. But really, what they're trying to accomplish is in one screen, visualize their CAPPM project financials and match them to their SAP project financials. But there's no real need to duplicate the data in both systems as opposed to just visualizing the data in one screen from both systems. So that's where this type of solution really works well, right? It isn't designed really where you need to kick off specific business processes from other enterprise tool sets. It's really designed to be able to visualize data from multiple systems in one screen. And the other solution I wanted to discuss was the ability to be able to display data in Excel. Right? Currently, and I would say that probably a large percentage of you do this by going to some portlet and exporting it to Excel, right? And then building a couple of pivots to show the data that they need. But the reason this isn't very popular is because it's very time consuming. So there's multiple steps involved in creating a chart. Now when I get into the demo, I'm going to show how you can actually accomplish this by clicking the button, right? Once we figure out what the data source is in CAPPM, as opposed to exporting it from CAPPM to a new Excel sheet, what we're doing is we're importing it from Excel into a sheet. And the reason we want to do that in those steps is because you can maintain your logic. So all you're doing really is when you click get, is you're really just refreshing the data within inside of your Excel sheet. So I'm going to start off the demo using Excel. And I'm going to just provide a couple of different simple examples that you can use in Excel to do and to get a lot of value out of your data and to really help people make decisions in flight as they enter the data for their job. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to do something simple like allocations, right? So I'm going to extract some allocation data. I'm going to select, I want a specific project that I want to get, and I'm going to say, get this data. All right. So the main reason I want to do this inside of Excel is because inside of my organization, I have a type of planning where I can plan based on a budget. So for specific months, they tell me how much money I have to spend every month on labor, right? So let's say in this case we have, I don't know, we can spend $250,000 a month on labor, all right? Well, because I've extracted the allocation data from within inside of CAPPM, right? within inside of CAPPM, I have a rate matrix for this particular user or for every user, and I know the month, which that means I know the number of hours. So in Excel, what we did is, in this case, is what we built the virtual cost plan. All right. So this virtual cost plan does what? It takes the number of hours in the month, multiplies it by this person's hourly wage, and then puts an amount down here. So let's say I wanted to figure out that I wanted to maintain my cost to $250,000 a month. In this case here, I'm at $350,000 on average, right, per month. So what I can do is I can say, well, if I was to take this and turn this into 0.8, I'm going to actually make it 0.7, and change this month to 0.7, right, I can see that I'm getting pretty close to that number, right? So it's allowing me to make decisions on how I can allocate my people based on how much it's going to cost. Right? And all I'm really doing is I extract some data in Excel, and I built a little component that basically multiplies one value by another value to give me my end goal result, which is I need the plan based on dollars, not based on people. So this I can now drag and drop. I can check and see what my cost plan is going to be for all of these months. And this gives me a good ability to be able to manage my data within inside of Excel. So that's a perfect example of where this comes in very handy. Now, another perfect example where this comes in handy is, let's say I wanted to do allocations for all of my resources, right? But I really want to know, I want to do my allocations, but I want to find out how busy this guy is. Well, now I can actually, so all I need to do is I need to hyperlink. So all I'm doing is I'm going to do another data extract, except I'm going to pass this resource ID as a parameter to my allocation pull. So now I do another data pull, right, another allocation pull, and it gets me all of the allocations for this particular user. Of course, in this case, I only have this user assigned to one project. But if he was assigned to multiple projects, it would show me that data within inside of Excel. So like I said, I can utilize the cost plan as well to be able to manage the cost plan or the virtual cost plan for that new data. So you can see the value in building new sheets dynamically and providing that data within inside of Excel. So that's a perfect example on how to do this or how to leverage Excel. But let's say we had a need to build a report for project data. So we need to extract the project data and then build some pivots around that project data. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come and say I want to get my data, and I'm going to grab my project data. And I'm going to say I don't want to do any filtering, and I say yeah. So all of what this Excel does is it utilizes the Clarity API, the Query API, to extract the data, right? So think if you have a portlet inside of CAPPM, it now becomes available for you to extract via the API layer. So now that we can configure the Excel to bring that data out, I can come here and I can say, well, I pulled out my project data, and the other thing I did is instead of manually building my dashboard every time, right, whenever I do the extract, right, this is where I said it's much better to use one Excel sheet, and from that one Excel sheet, when you pull the data out, then you just have it implement your logic dynamically, right? As opposed to if you went to the portlet and you export that data, it's going to come to a new Excel sheet, and therefore you have to manipulate that new Excel sheet. In this case, I'm just going to go and I click on the dashboard, and now shows me all of the data for these particular projects. So this is my project dashboard, right? Now it didn't ask me, it asked me if I wanted to filter by anything. Now in this case, I said, no, I don't want to filter my data by anything because I can slice and dice my data directly inside of Excel. So I can come here and I can literally use any of the data slicers directly inside of Excel to be able to show the different criteria for my project data. So this is another perfect example where we extract and it dynamically builds data reports. So what can you do? You just need to take this Excel, you send it to your boss, you go, oh, you want to see project data? Literally you go, you click and you select projects, and it's going to display the data, right? And this could be applied to any object within inside of the CAPPM. ecosystem. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a couple of seconds showing you different types of reporting possibilities inside of SharePoint. So I've just clicked on this particular project inside of CAPPM, okay? And from here, I have a link that basically links me to a SharePoint site of this project. So now I'm going to talk about different concepts. So inside of here, right, we have some basic reporting as far as grids and graphs, right? But what I want to show you is all sorts of different types of options that you can do inside of SharePoint. So for example, in this case, we had a client say, well, I would like to see a report that looks similar to the new CAPPM UI inside of SharePoint. Now, because inside of SharePoint, you have the ability to put CSSs, you can mix it with HTML, right? Sky's the limit. You can put JavaScript and you can turn this and make this look any way you want. So these are some types of components where, right, you can say, well, for a specific status report, you can see your overall, your schedule, your effort, or you can see, what you can dynamically build a calendar, see what tasks are coming up. But where I really want to focus a little bit of time on is on the initial page that I showed how to integrate or how to display multiple different tool sets in one screen. So inside of the screen, I'm going to go to the reports link, and inside of here, right, we have a mixture of data that comes from inside of CAPPM, and part of it comes from ServiceNow, right? Why? Because as an ITSM, for example, a service manager, I might be interested in not only my team utilization, but I'm also interested in seeing how my SLAs are doing, right, by stage. So these are different components, and all we are doing is, in this case, is we are leveraging the same query API. So we're utilizing the API to extract the data from inside of CAPPM to display it inside of SharePoint. Now, another example that a lot of people like to use is they like to embed the Excel services directly inside of SharePoint. So utilizing the same technology or the same API, right, we can now, in this case, what we're doing is we're extracting and displaying the process engine, so document approvals around a specific set of project managers and a specific set of projects inside of CAPPM. A couple of things I want to cover, right, is, what's the real cost of reporting, right? The solutions that we just proposed in this scenario, right, is to try and let you utilize existing technologies that your organization already has with existing technology that CAPPM already has. So really, what we want to do is let you utilize the tools that you're currently using to be able to take full advantage of the data that's inside of your system. Mainly, you want to think about, what's the cost of the information and what's the cost of poor data quality, right? If you have reporting that's made easy and accessible to end users, it's pretty straightforward to get this at least dramatically reduced inside of your organization.